What is the best Cuban rum? That's what this video is all about, so let's find out. Now, before we dive in too much further, yes, there are loads and loads of Cuban rums. I've basically broken this down. I'm looking at Smuggler's Cove Category 4, column still rums, but aged column still rums. And I've kind of even narrowed this down even more. There are more Category 4 rums behind me, but I've gone Cuban and essentially 7 and 8 year old rums. If there are other rums missing that I haven't got behind me, then let me know, and I'm talking Cuban rums, let me know in the comments below, and also let me know which one of these is your favourite, which one would you pick. Let me run you through the rums that are obviously going to be featuring this. The first one will need no introduction, but there is a kind of a little story that's going to set the scene for the Santiago. This is Havana 7-year-old, pretty much the go-to aged 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old rum available in any supermarkets. It's never really had a competitor over the last sort of 10, 15 years or so. It's owned by Pernod Ricard, global entity, huge global entity. They also own Absolute, they also own Beefeater Gin, it's Absolute Vodka, Beefeater Gin, Jameson's Whiskey, plenty of malt whiskey brands. Havana is their big, Martel Cognac as well. Havana is their big player. Huge route to market, easy distribution chains. They can keep their prices low. They go for volume. It is just, it's that simple. It's a quality product that's had very little competition and just dominates its kind of category, if you like. So that's Havana 7-year-old. I do really, really like it. It's not fared well so far in taste tests for me, but that's purely because the rums I've had have been more suited to my palate. So this one's going to be really interesting to me. Now, step forward, Santiago de Cuba, Ron Santiago de Cuba. Now, quick little side story as well. Both of these rums were distributed by a good friend of mine just down the road, JB and John. That's where I get the bitters from as well, Miss Better's Bitters. He looks after that. He still is Ron Cubay. That's one of his brands in the UK, just a small UK distributor. That's all he is. Up until, I've lost track of time now, maybe 18 months or so at the time of shooting, Santiago de Cuba, I'm assuming, was bought out by Diageo. I'm assuming Diageo have got part own, if not fully own the company. Okay, so Diageo, you might be thinking, who are they? Diageo are Smirnoff, Gordon's, the big rum player, Captain Morgan's. Okay, but they've never, and Bailey's and Guinness and all that sort of stuff as well. But Diageo, as a big, huge global entity, have never ever had a competitor to Havana rums. It's a category that they do not kind of own or even have any kind of decent market share of. And Diageo, being Diageo, they are going to want to compete. So Diageo have got involved. As I say, whether they part own this now, I don't know, but they definitely distributing this in the UK. I would imagine that they part own in some description. I don't know the deals there. But yeah, so see this now as Diageo's a big competitor to Havana 7-year-old. This will be in most supermarkets by the end of 2020. It's already in Tesco's. It's where I kind of got this from. And to kind of to bring that story full round, you can kind of see this is where it was. This is how it was being distributed under John, JBE John. That's kind of what it looked like. You can see it's now. And that's the 3-year-old. You can see it's much more supermarket and market friendly if you want. It's going to stand out on your supermarket shelves. So it's kind of had that whole evolution, brand evolution. Now, as I say, Diageo, yes, they kind of do distribute Ron Zacapa. Yes, they do distribute Pampero as well. They are 2 of their brands. But let's face it, neither of those brands are going to go head to head with Havana. It just isn't going to happen. You know, they are brands that are just, to be fair, Diageo haven't really been interested in them. So whether Diageo haven't got the right confidence in him, I don't know. But they've certainly got the money. They certainly could have made a fist of it, but they just haven't. So I think now this is Diageo's chance to really sort of kind of compete with Havana and kind of steal some market share. So Ron Santiago de Cuba is going to be the big player probably by the end of this year. I can imagine a lot of bar deals happening. I can imagine a lot of supermarket deals happening. I can imagine this going quite a long way, but we shall see. So I don't know which one. I've never tasted the 8-year-old, never ever had it. So it's going to be very interesting for me. But just to bring this round to the 3rd one, Ron Cubay. No strangers to this channel will know that I love the Blanca. It's one of my favourite daiquiri. Never done it blind tasting. That video is still to come. but absolutely adore it as a daiquiri. The blind tasting for me is going to be very interesting. But the Carta Dorada, the 4-year-old, smashed its video a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely smashed it. Every single category in the blind tasting walked in, and that was going up against Havana Especial. It rumped it. So this is going to be really, really interesting for me. I'm looking forward to tasting this alongside each other. The taste tests, I'm going to do 5, as I've only got 3 rums today. I'm going to do 5 taste tests. I've got an extra one for you. So we're obviously going to go neat. Mummy Bum, and I'll flash her up on screen now. She'll be in here swapping them all around. But we're going to go for a neat tasting. We're going to go for a rum and coke, because I think these would be, a lot of you would buy these as rum and coke rums. I'm going to go ginger, because again, I think these are very much suited to ginger ale. Not ginger beer for me, but ginger ale. I'm going for a daiquiri. Potentially not daiquiri rums. I do prefer sort of the light white rums for daiquiris. But as Trevor and Windy say in my Discord, moody daiquiris. I think these are going to be perfectly kind of for moody daiquiris, essentially. So I'm going to do moody daiquiris. I might even use Demerara sugar syrup for this. That could be interesting. But the one cocktail I do think these are going to be suited to is Rum Old Fashions. So I'm going to be doing that up. So that's your 5 cocktails. But before we dive into that, let's talk price. Now, as I've hinted, you might already be expecting Ron Cubay to be more expensive than that, purely because they're supermarket available. That never will be. It never will be unless it's bought out by someone. It just hasn't. It's just not a big enough brand. There's not enough money in the brand to kind of make it cheap and cheerful. Now, some of the other Ron Cubays are, we're talking £6, £7, £8 in some categories, more expensive than their competitors. The Carta Blanca is a good £6 to £7 more expensive than some of this. But in my view, it was worth it. And the Carta Dorada was at least £5, if not £6 more expensive, and it romped its category. So I'm looking forward to this. Now, prices, I've set that up because it isn't actually that much more expensive. I've gone Tesco's for these two because that's where you can get them. Not an offer, just normal Tesco's prices, £22 a bottle, which for a 7-year-old rum, bearing in mind Havana Especial will be £20, bearing in mind your Appleton Signatures is going to be like £24 in supermarkets. £22 for that is an absolute bargain. That is just purely demonstrating Pernod Ricard's buying power, their might, their marketing power, okay? Is that potentially a more expensive rum? I think if it wasn't Pernod Ricard, I think that would potentially be a £26, £28 rum. So purely because of the size of the company, they can afford to sell it a lot cheaper because they've got the volume. It's that simple. So £22 for that. Santiago de Cuba is coming in at Tesco's at £24. All right, £24. So pretty, you know, it's £2 similar, £2 difference there, which again, I'm quite happy with. When you kind of looking at, as I say, Appleton Signature, which is kind of an unaged, you know, these are 7 or 8 year old. Appleton Signature is like £24 in Tesco's a lot of the time. I think they're pretty decent prices, to be fair. So you can automatically see the buying power of Diageo and Pernod Ricard. Now, I've already kind of said, I've set this up. It actually isn't as much more as you'd expect. Master of Malt, and you will only be able to get this online. Master of Malt, not drink supermarket, Whiskey Exchange, all those sort of places. 26. This is Master of Malt, logged out, £26.45. So you're only talking less than £2.50 a bottle more. So this is going to be a really interesting taste test for me. Is that is it going to follow all the other Cubays? Am I going to adore that, or am I going to pick that? Bearing in mind, I've already tasted this, and Bacardi, it's not fared too well. Bacardi smashed the sort of video that I did with that. But this is Cuban rums. Cuban rums are slightly different. So let's get into the taste tests. Right then, so the neat tasting. Kind of really enjoyed this, actually. It's really, really funny. I'm going to stake, I think, of that one. I think it's this one. Yeah, smell it on the nose. I'm going to stake. I'm going to say it now. That's Havana. That is Havana. It's that unmistakable Havana sort of club nose, especially on the 7-year-old, and taste. As soon as I smelt it, it's just like, yeah, that's that. Which is kind of a little bit annoying because that made it an unfair tasting for me. However, even then, I can pick up the subtle variances. So, in my favourite one, which was this one, excuse me, got the old gas now from all this. This one has a lot fruitier, kind of vanilla-y nose to it. which I kind of wasn't expecting for Cuban. Yes, I've had this before. I haven't had this for a few weeks, and I've had a lot of rums in between there. But it's got like the fruitier kind of nose, the sort of tropical fruit vibe to it. It's not as oaky and wooden sort of charred tobacco notes as these two. So for me personally, that was my favourite. But I completely understand the whiskey. I'm not a whiskey fan. I'm not a huge whiskey fan. I think for the whiskey fans, I think potentially you would go for that one. I really do think you potentially go for that one. But for my palate, it's just a little bit softer and a little bit more rounded. That was perfect for me. That one was really nice. It's still got the peppery sort of burn to it. It's smoother. It's a lot smoother for me in that one. That one's got really kind of oaky, woody kind of finish, tobacco finish on there. That's a bit more softer, slight oak, medium, long finish on that, medium finish on that, medium finish on that. For me, if I was just having a kind of a few rums to sip, I would go for this one. So I'm pretty convinced. Let's just do this one first. I'm pretty convinced this is Havana, number one. Yeah, so number one, number two, number three. Okay, that's how I've done it. 1, 2, 3. So number one is Havana. I did think that. Right. Out of these two, I don't know. I think this one is Cubay. I think this is Cubay. Yeah. Yeah, number two, Santiago. That means my favourite was number 3, Ron Cubay. Really interesting, really completely and utterly different rums. Those two are similar-ish, but that one's definitely got sort of the more kind of wooden, oaky bite to it. As I say, for me personally, I'm in that camp, but I completely see why people would go for that. It is, for me, kind of got those whiskey vibes, and I'm not a huge whiskey person. Rye vibes to it. That's kind of what I've described that. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Ron Cubay, yeah, like that. Right then, so the rum and coke was the next test up. I really, so that was the first one I tried, and I put nice. It's a little bit harsh. But it's like smoother aftertaste. It's not the perfect rum and coke, but it was nice. So that was the first one I tasted. So I put that in second place. That was the second one I tasted, and I just put lacking. It's got a weird kind of, I can't really pinpoint it. I'm going to say aniseed, but it's a weird aftertaste that I can't quite pick on it. And I was just like, I'm not loving that at all. So that was my least favourite, my second favourite. And this one was the last one I tasted, and it was the best finish of the lot. Smoother, kind of rum and coke vibes. There's no sort of oakiness burn to it. Again, I appreciate I think that might be Havana again. Again, out of these two, I don't know. I would say that's Havana. But for me, this one is just like the completely sort of rounded, easy-going. I love this title. I'm going to just coin it the Session Rum and Coke. I think that, for me, is the Session Rum and Coke. So that was my favourite. So let's go. I've done these in the opposite order this week for some reason. I've normally put my worst there and my best there. But so my least favourite, number 2, Santiago de Cuba. It's my least favourite. So is this Havana? Number 1. Yeah. It's just that you can't mistake it. I really can't. It's just, I think when I have more and more rums, I think I'm probably going to lose it. But for the rums I've got and the collection I've got, and probably because I've had that a couple of times doing the 8-year-old test and all that. Yeah. So this one has to be number 3, Ron Cubay. Again, 2 for 2. It's just really suited for my palate. That really like that. Right, the next test is the rum and ginger ales. Now, I thought this is where these rums kind of stood out. I kind of like them as rum and ginger ale rums. So let's start off with the rum. So I've written in notes in the order I tasted. So that was the rum I tasted first. I put that in second place. I put nice ginger ale. Now, this is really interesting because the one thing I wanted to do to that, as soon as I tasted it, I wanted to add a wedge of lime and Angostura bitters. That's what that was crying out for me. I really liked it. Smooth, no oaky burn on there at all or anything like that. In fact, I got oak off that one, so I'm guessing that's Havana for this one. Which was my least favourite out of those 3. I put basically stronger burn. So this was the second one I tried. Stronger burn, oak notes, finish is a bit meh on that. So just purely, I don't know. Just for the vibes I'm getting, I think that's Havana. But I come back to this one then, And this was just lovely, rounded. I didn't want to do anything for this. This for me is to just add rum, ice cube, ginger ale. Job is a good one. That is lovely. Little subtle hints of vanilla again. And the way I'm going, I think that is probably Cubay. I'm not sure. I really don't know if this is a kind of a bias test or whether it's a true palate thing. I'm basically judging these on what I like. And that for me won. So I don't know. I think that's potentially Havana coming out there in bottom place. So let's go. Let's see. Oh, no, number 2. Santiago de Cuba was my least favourite in there. So there's no way that's, yeah, number 1. I was going to say there's no way that was Cubay. Wow, okay. So interesting. With ginger, the oaky notes really come out in that, but sort of dull down in that. Whereas the Coke brings the oaky notes out of that. I tell you what would be interesting with that. The signature Coke, kind of like the woody, the smoky and the chili or spicy, whatever. That would be quite interesting, man. So let's just confirm this. Yeah, number 3. Number 3 is my favourite. I love this. Absolutely adore this. Right, and the next taste test is the Daiquiri. Just to confirm, I poured the rum, like I normally do, the rum in a glass. Now, I did use Demerara sugar, but I used my blender. So my lime and my Demerara, there's loads more sort of Daiquiri mix in there. I thought Demerara would be better with these than sort of white rum. Kind of blended up and then measured. So I've got exactly the right amount of, so I've basically done a 6-to-1 ratio now. 6 parts rum, 6. Look, 1, 2, 3, 6 parts rum, 2 parts lime, 1 part sugar. Now, I'll be brutally honest. I have got a favourite out of those. I wouldn't have any of those as a daiquiri. They, for me, are not daiquiri rums. I know some of you, Windy, Trevor and all that, and others, I know some of you love your moody daiquiris, as you call them. I don't. I much prefer my sort of lighter white rums in daiquiris. I really do. So none of these kind of were like, oh. The first one I tested was that one. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Too oaky, peppery, a big cross. That's what I put there. I was just like, no, not having that. So didn't enjoy that at all. The second one I had, I put nicer, rounded, still not perfect, but it's a lot better than that one. And then the first one, I put nice, fresh, prefer white rum daiquiri, but for me, the best out of the 3. That's not saying much. It is the best one out of the 3 for me. It's the kind of more rounded daiquiri. But I've got a lot better rums here for daiquiri rums. A lot better. So, but that's thrown me then, because if the oaky, I'm wondering, because the oaky peppery vibes coming off that, I would have naturally assumed was Havana. But bearing in mind what the Santiago did with ginger, it's really thrown me now. So, in last place, number 1 is Havana. Yeah, Havana 3-year-old for a daiquiri, the Especial, and the 7-year-old, no. In second place, number 2, Santiago de Cuba. Wow, this is a clean sweep then for me. Number 3, it's just, to go back to the neat, it's just a completely and utterly different tasting rum. Where are we? Number 3, number 1? Yeah, so on the nose, it's like vanilla fruit on the nose. And then you come up to that, you've got woods, pepper, oak. It just, for 2 Cuban rums that you potentially put, they're both 7-year-old rums as well, put head to head, they're completely and utterly different. Now, as I say, I totally get why people, why it is such a big seller. I get it. I'm just not a whiskey fan, and I think this is probably a rum suited to whiskey fans, if I'm honest. But for me, the Ron Cubay Anejo, so far, it's properly up your way, as you can see. It's like 4 from 4, essentially. But then it makes completely different drinks. The drinks those 2 makes are, worlds apart. So that's that. By complete contrast from the daiquiri, we now move on to the old fashions. And what a difference that makes. These 3 rums, all 3 of those, again, I have got a favourite. I wouldn't say favourite, you'll see in a second, but serve me up all 3 of those as an old fashioned. I am totally and utterly happy. They are precisely old-fashioned rums. And for me, yes, you probably get even better when you go up to 10-year-old, 12-year-old rums. But for 7 and 8-year-old rums, that is precisely where they sit for me. The first one I tasted actually in last, and this is how it started off, right? So the notes I put for that, the first one, I put this in last place. Gorgeous. That's what I put. Oh, gorgeous old-fashioned, rum forward, nice balance of fresh. You've got a little bit of peppery burn on there, but the bitters, the demerara sugar really comes through. That is so well balanced. That is a cracking old-fashioned. All right. The caveat of where I'm going with this is that potentially I'm going to have one that I really enjoy, and then it might, the second one halfway through might get a bit too much for me. Just me personally, but I really did adore that as a one-off drink. That is gorgeous. So I got that. So I put that in last place. You know, that's a high bar to set so far. So number 2, I've put even better, but the difference is it's more mellow, it's more rounded. You haven't got the oaky bite. So for me, I was confident that I would get through 2 of those, if not more. All right. So that's how I'm classifying that. That's the difference for me. You still get a sort of nice sort of woody oaky bites to it that kind of work quite well with the sugar and the Angostura bitters, but not as much as that one. So for me, that's how I'm classifying. It's hard to say that's better than that. It's just that if I'm having 2 of them, I think I could get through 2 of those a lot easier than I get through 2 of those. That's that, justifying that. And then we got onto the one that I put as my favourite. Now, again, I have to justify this. If you want a rum forward, rum fashioned, that for me is the baby. That is the one I put in last place, is the baby. That for me, that is the most rum forward out of all of them in that note, and I really like that. But this is the one that's just smoother, mellower. It's got a little kind of sort of vanilla twists in that, less oak, and in fact, no real oakiness coming through that at all. It's the one that I would be very confident in sort of having a session on, if you like, a 2, 3, 4 old fashions of a night. That is the one that suits my palate because I just don't. Sometimes, you know, as a one-off, that is stunning. It is stunning, but as a 2, 3, 4, I think that's where my palate has to go for. And that's so. Even though that is sitting in last place, they are all 3 of those are really good. Okay, so that's the only way I can describe them to you. That is not better than that. It's just the fact that I could probably, because of the less oak, the less pepper, the less burn, I could probably have more of those. So take that as you will. Don't take that as me saying this one is the best. Take that as me saying, for me personally, that's a one-off. That's a 2, 3, 4 off. Okay, that's the only way I can split those. In full disclosure, not a horrible one. So just to kind of run you down which ones these are, just so we know. Number 1, Havana. Kind of expected it. Havana. That's really good. It is really good. This one, number 2. So Santiago de Cuba, which means in number 3 is the Ron Cubay. So to sum up in the Battle of Cuba, this was really interesting. I didn't expect that to go kind of like that. I didn't expect there to be that much variance between, well, essentially between that and those 2. There is a lot of variance there for me. I can't, this is geared towards my palate. I can't in all consciousness say that is, whereas I have in other videos, I can't in all consciousness say that is far superior to that. It's just a very different rum. Very different. That's the only way I can say it. This is going to have its fans, and out of the 2, okay, let's break this down. Out of the 2, it's pretty, I think it might have been an even split through there, but I get the whiskey, the real kind of whiskey vibe fans, you're going to go from that. But if you're not a huge whiskey kind of rye fan, but you do like a little bit of oakiness, you would probably pick that one. But if those woody notes are really not your vibe, at all, but you kind of really love that sort of that inherent Cuban thing that's going on, because these are still different. I'm going to do another category 4 with the Flor de Caña, the 7-year-old in there. What's the other one I've got in there? The Angostura 7-year-old is going to come out in a future video, so that's going to be another one. And there is the Plantation Guatemala and Belize, that's going to feature in this category as well. So I kind of might pit them against each other there. Just two very, very different styles of rums there, even though they are Cuban category 4 column stilled rums, completely different finishes. So I haven't really answered the question which is the best. All I've kind of tried to guide you is which one may suit your palate more. For me, that is Ron Cubay. I absolutely adore that, and it's becoming ever more apparent as I go up the range why. Because it is the less oaky, woody, peppery, spice one out of the lot. Out of each range, whether you're in the Carta Dorada, whether you're in the Blanca, the Reserva, the sort of 10 to 12-year-old battle is going to be quite interesting as well, actually. Do that neat. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments below how you'd sit. You know, I really don't want to put you off buying either of those two. I just personally, for my palate, adore that, but I completely understand why you would pick one of these two.